Chapter 6. Out There. Silva slowly runs a scalpel across Brian's forearm. The teen winces in pain, but does not cry out. "Are you already that desensitized to these tests?" Silva asks, surprised by the teen's reaction. The GX parasite in Brian's blood already begins to send proteins to the site of the injury and start to clot the bleeding. "Fascinating. Your regenerative abilities are phenomenal. With the exception of Rapture, yours may be the fastest healing factor of all enhanced beings I've ever seen firsthand. It's no wonder why Khan and the doctor both put so much time and energy into keeping you alive. You are the perfect bonding of human and parasite. Your abilities are not so specialized in one area like most of the GX enhanced. No, you seem to be a plateau of perfectly balanced stats. You are what they dreamed in achieving, a super soldier with little to no weaknesses. You do not turn into a reptilian monstrosity when your parasite is triggered like the others. Soldiers like you, mass-produced, would be indistinguishable from ordinary men and women. A parasite sleeper agent, able to blend in with the crowd. Go cut yourself and see how fast you heal," Brian says, his voice weak. "Make sure you go for the jugular vein, for quick results." "Amusing," Silva says, unimpressed. "I, however, do not possess the GX parasite, so I would surely bleed out." "I think that was his point," Candy Stripe says, entering the room. "So what exactly is it you're trying to determine with these tests?" Young Mr. Rude's bond with the GX parasite is different than any of the others. Somehow, the parasite is kept in check within his body. In all other subjects, the parasite is in a constant struggle to gain full control of its host. If I can isolate what it is that makes him special, I will be able to duplicate the effect in any future subjects. All GX-enhanced soldiers would be 100% with no fear of transforming into a hideous monstrosity mid-battle and losing control. "And that is what the doctor wishes as well?" Silva nods. "In exchange for his protection here, I am to increase the effectiveness of his enhanced warriors. I don't know much about the Sakari DNA infusions, so I must use my knowledge of the GX parasite to boost results in his favor." "Does having the parasite really make one significantly stronger?" she asks, intrigued. Young Brian was a nobody before the GX parasite, yet after receiving it, he was able to best in combat the best of Conco's seasoned veterans. And those operatives also had the GX parasite. So why did he increase so much more than they did? That is part of what I seek to uncover here. I take it you do not have the GX parasite in your blood. Candy Stripe shakes her head. My enhancements are from Sakari blood treatments and demonic tissue grafts. Would you like to have the parasite? I can extract a sample from our young friend here. Is that something you desire? The doctor asks, entering the room. I would not be insulted if you said yes. Even I am impressed by the degree to which the GX parasite is capable of boosting some individuals. Some? Candy Stripe whispers, concerned. What do you mean by some? Not all candidates are a fit for the parasite. In fact, more than 70% of all subjects are incompatible. And what exactly does that mean? Their minds will deteriorate as the parasite gains complete domination of their bodies. They will become vicious predators, whose only instinct is to pass the parasite on to as many hosts as possible, in hopes of finding a suitable offspring. Eventually, their fever will grow too great and burn through their brain, killing them. Is there a way to know if someone is compatible with the parasite before injecting them? Candy Stripe asks. So far, the only surefire method to guarantee a successful bonding is to find hosts who are immediate blood relations of someone who is already known to be compatible. So if you have a brother or a sister who is already bonded with the parasite and did not become a reject, or if one of your parents or grandparents are, then you two will be a successful match nearly 100% of the time, Silva says. Something in a person's genetics that makes them compatible or not is passed on through their hereditary line, the doctor elaborates. Has anyone been able to isolate the gene responsible? I've been working without a laboratory since my less than cordial split from Conco's employment. As such, I'm unaware if any of my contemporaries or successors have been able to do so. Before injecting any of my staff with anything, please determine which genetic markers are a factor in bonding. Perhaps we can find commonalities. I do not want to lose any valuable personnel, the doctor says. Silva nods. With access to your equipment, I should be able to do so in short order. I'll have to do some experimenting with subjects you would not be upset losing, but I am confident in my success. That can be arranged, the doctor says. Flex begins to laugh, watching Mr. E and Tyrell pace nervously around the room. The kid is dead by now, she says, smiling through blood-stained teeth. Without her mask, her hair is caked with dried blood and dirt. Her eyes are vibrant with malice. Shut up, Tyrell says, unable to endure her taunts anymore. Why would they keep him alive? All Conco wants is their equipment back. He isn't worth anything to the doctor. You're all in denial. We weren't hired to bring any of you in alive. You're all wanted dead, the boy included. Our only special instructions were not to damage the biosuit beyond repair. If they wanted Brian dead, why take him captive in the first place? Mr. E asks. Why didn't your buddy execute him on the spot? Release me, and I can go ask the doctor for you. Tyrell tightens the young woman's restraints. Fat chance. You aren't going anywhere. You have no plan, Flex laughs. You're a couple of scared and powerless men trying to play heroes, but you're in way over your heads. I'm going to get out of these restraints, and I'm going to kill both of you slowly. Neither of you can do a goddamn thing to stop me. I could end you with a single finger's worth of my strength. Storm walks over with a roll of duct tape and places a strip over Flex's mouth. Ignore her. We need to prepare to rescue Brian. We don't know the strength of the doctor's forces, Tyrell says. We need to scout the hospital before we go in half-cocked like last time. I'll be doing the fighting, not you. Leave the strategizing to me, Storm growls. Knock it off, Mr. E says. You're as bad as a couple of kids. We're on the same side and we need to stick together. No more infighting. Flex laughs, even though her mouth is covered. This only angers Tyrell and Storm more. Perril's gathering the intel we need on the hospital. When he returns, we'll begin our planning, Storm says. Why do you trust that little psychopath? Tyrell asks. He'd just as soon kill us as help us. I don't trust him either. He's as dangerous as any of the doctor's operatives, Mr. E says. He's the only one of us who is able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Rapture or Yamura. We need him on our side, Storm says. But is he really? Mr. E asks. On our side, that is. He's exhibited a history of betrayal. Storm cannot tell them that Peril is his younger brother. Of course, he sees how damaged the boy is, but he must still have faith that his little brother is inside somewhere, past the emotional scars and mental breaks. They were both taken away from their parents and tortured. Peril was turned into a killer, but he is still at the end of the day just a kid. Storm refuses to believe that it's too late to turn his brother down the correct path. Even if your friend is still alive, he's likely dissected beyond all saving, says Switch, the other captive GX warrior. He's in much worse shape than Flex, and barely clings to consciousness. Finally, he speaks, Tyrell mocks, and yet he adds nothing worthwhile to the conversation. The doctor is talented at enhancing fighters with tissue and organ grafts from non-human creatures, and boosting abilities and strength with Sakari blood, but he knows little of the GX parasite. She and I were the last of the samples the doctor was given by Konko to make him replacements for the crew killed by your lot in Yamura. By experimenting on your friend, the doctor will learn all he desires about the parasite and perfect the process of making enhanced warriors. Why Brian? Tyrell asks. Why is he so special? When each of us utilizes the parasite, we lose a bit of control over the symbiosis, Storm explains. The higher the percentage of the parasite being activated, the more our physical form degrades and undergoes transformation. Brian's not subject to these downsides from what I've observed. He's able to draw out the power of the parasite without opening himself up to being taken over. It's true, Switch adds. When I use too much of my powers, I can feel my mind slipping into an abyss. It's during this time that scales begin to form on my skin, and I become more reptilian in appearance. Why reptilian? Tyrell asks. It may be some shared DNA memory of one of the parasite's previous hosts many generations ago, maybe even their original host, that they evolved alongside, Mr. E postulates. That kid doesn't have any of those drawbacks. For some reason, he can use more of the parasite at will, with no physical mutations. If the doctor can unlock that secret, he'll be able to create the greatest warriors this world has ever seen, Switch laughs. None of you will be able to stop us with that kind of power on our side. Peril returns, covered in blood. What the hell happened to you? Tyrell asks. I thought you were on recon, not engaging in combat. Peril shrugs. Not in my blood. He picks up a piece of bone out of his hair with little reaction. What happened? Storm asks. I thought we were clear about waiting to engage until we had a plan in place. He's irritated and concerned with his brother's inability to follow instructions. I was spotted. I couldn't let him report me back to the doctor, so I killed him, Peril replies. It isn't a big deal. That's an awful lot of blood. Did you stop him with a stick of dynamite? Tyrell asks. Peril grins, tapping a finger to his temple. Would you like to find out? Flex again laughs, drawing Peril's attention. Why is that bitch still alive? He walks over and wraps his fingers around her throat. Allow me to remedy that error. Stop it, Storm orders. Let her go. You know, I am really getting tired of you trying to boss me around all the time. Maybe I should make your head explode next, Peril threatens, glaring at Storm. Just because we came out of the same training program doesn't mean we're friends. Storm tenses, triggering a small portion of the GX parasite in his blood to activate, and sends sparkles of electricity to his fingertips. As Storm's hair stands on end due to the static, Peril grins in anticipation of the fight. We might still need them, Mr. E says, trying to de-escalate. They aren't just regular mercs, created by the doctor through his mad science. These fighters were purposely chosen to receive the last of the GX parasite and be given back to Khan as replacements for the slain members of his elite security ops. They might know something more about the missing people of Clavemont, or how to get at Khan's remaining facilities, the ones off the books we can't locate. I don't care about any of that. Peril releases his grip on Flex's throat. But I'll play along a bit longer for the opportunity to kill as many of these bastards tied to Khan as possible. I was robbed of killing him already, and have to settle for the scraps. I will not miss what little chance I have at revenge. So what did you find out while observing the hospital? Mr. E asks. The doctor still has at least 5 more GX-enhanced fighters that I've seen on patrol. That is including the one that took out the virtual. Bulldog, Storm adds, and he was pretty damn tough. There's also roughly 50 other genetically modified operatives, disguised as staff, scattered throughout the building, and one female, who acts as the doctor's personal bodyguard. She's the second strongest, behind probably only Bulldog. Damn, Tyrell sighs. You can't fight those odds. You can't, Peril laughs. It will barely be a challenge for me. We must go about this carefully, Mr. E says. With that many enemies, we can't go in without a plan. The only plan we need is for you to stay out of my way or die, Peril growls. No, we all need to work together or Brian might be killed, Tyrell says. He looks to Mr. E for support. Over the past year, the former educator has become a friend and mentor to their group, despite Peril's insistence on being a difficult, independent variable. Since Peril seems so eager to fight, I think he should draw out as much of the enemy into battle as he can, while the rest of us infiltrate the hospital and search for Brian, Mr. E says. Peril will need my help, Storm says. Despite whatever he may claim, he can't do this all on his own. He'll have to, Mr. E argues. We'll need you more inside to deal with any enhanced fighters that don't take the bait and engage him in battle. Storm doesn't like the idea of his brother fighting so many enemies alone, but he knows Mr. E is right. He and Tyrell cannot handle even one leftover enhanced fighter. None of you are strong enough to best our forces, Switch says. Your attack will end in complete failure. Just because your strongest was able to catch the virtual off guard, that doesn't mean he's any threat to me, Peril grins. He makes it clear that he prefers to only refer to the other fighters by their code names. I am vastly superior to him. The fancy suit is all that makes him special. Bulldog may be the head of security, but he's far from our strongest fighter, Switch laughs. You think physical strength is what matters, but there are those with abilities that you have zero counter for. I welcome the challenge, Peril smiles. Do you think he's bluffing? Tyrell asks. Probably not, Storm cautions. The GX parasite can sometimes bestow one with very unique powers. No two fighters ever have identical abilities. It doesn't matter what powers they have. I will still crush any who stand in my way, Peril says. Arriving in Brighton in 2 vans, 9 PIA agents, and 2 enhanced contractors set up a temporary operations hub in an abandoned restaurant within view of the apartment buildings where the NHE energy signatures originated. I'm still getting solid readings, Agent Jensen Hughes says, checking the bioscanning device. They aren't moving, though. They might possibly be in some kind of state of dormancy. Can you identify what kind of creature they are with that machine? Alyssa asks. She may have more experience with NHEs than the other agents, but she knows very little about their technology. We aren't anywhere near that level of sophistication yet, Hughes says. We're going to need to make eyes on the targets for a positive identification. How many of them are there? Bernard asks. 4, maybe 5. They're closely grouped, so it's difficult to tell for sure. They seem large, Alyssa says, leaning over Hughes to see the screen. And they do not have one uniform shape. What do you mean? Agent John Holland asks, walking over to them. Alyssa points to one of the radar hits. See how this one is wider than it is tall? That leads me to believe that it's a quadruped. She points to another. But this one is shaped more cylindrical and is taller than any human. What kind of creatures would be congregating in the same hunting ground without violence between each other? Holland asks. We'll know for sure when we move in, but the victims were drained of their life forces, so much that their bodies dried up and shriveled into mummification, Callahan says. Predatory spirits, Alyssa whispers. Beasts of the endless abyss. Are you still thinking they're revenants? Callahan asks. Alyssa nods. There is no set shape or form for a revenant, as they do not all originate from the same beings. One may look humanoid, while another may be a grotesque amalgam of many different creatures. What's the standard procedure for dealing with revenants? Agent Francis Mercado asks. Callahan looks to Alyssa and Bernard for their expert opinions. Well, you have never encountered a revenant before, Bernard asks. Callahan shakes his head. The last known revenant report was from before this agency was founded. We're still working to build our databases. I'm sure that many sightings go unreported currently. As with any creature from the space between life and death, you will know they are near through the rapid decline in temperature. Electronic devices may malfunction, and you may also hear radio or television disturbances. Weaker life forms will wither and die in the mere presence of a revenant. Flowers will wilt, and small animals, such as insects, will die immediately. A revenant feeds off of life energy. If they're dead, why do they need to feed? Holland asks. A revenant is more of a non-life than a dead creature. They are no longer the same entity as the one that died originally. A revenant may start off as a dog or a man or a bird, but after hundreds of years of feeding or being fed upon, it will transform into an efficient, predatory creature with much higher intelligence than a common animal. What about people? You said a human soul can turn into a revenant? Mercado asks. Alyssa nods. They are the most dangerous, because they begin their existence with intelligence. They retain some of the traits they had while living. They also require less consumed life energy before transforming. Awesome, Lachey says with sarcasm. But how do we kill them? They've mutated enough to regain physical forms, so enough trauma will reduce them back to a purely spiritual state, Alyssa says. How fast can they drain a victim? Callahan asks. Will we have enough time to destroy their bodies before we're also killed? Proximity siphoning is much slower. It would take hours or even days to die from that kind of feeding. A revenant would also need to physically make contact with you to kill you quickly. Clear on don't get grabbed, Lachey says, sighing loudly. It is not that simple, Bernard says. Revenants are also invisible to anyone who has not glimpsed death. One's eyes must also already be open to the veil between life and death to be able to see a revenant. They're fucking invisible? What is this bullshit? Lachey says, upset. Kind of fucking overpowered. It's fine, Callahan says. I'd be surprised if any of us in this position is unable to see these creatures. Not with our backgrounds in military and law enforcement. We can handle this, Bernard says. Didn't you say that your main objective in this town is the doctor? You'll handle the evil men, and we will handle the otherworldly creatures. Callahan again looks at the bioscanner readout. There's got to be 4 or 5 of those things. Nothing we cannot handle, Alyssa says, drawing her sword. The weapon is a long katana, decorated along the handle with intricate engravings. The sword is called Amel Clinok, and is magically enchanted blade. All right, Callahan says with a nod. But contact me immediately if the situation goes south, and rejoin us at the hospital when you're clear. Alyssa and Bernard move into the building, ready to slay the revenants. Can the two of them really take out all of those monsters? Holland asks. We don't have the time to find out. Arm up and move out. We're heading for the hospital to complete our objective, Callahan says. Storm stretches out, loosening up before the impending battle. Peril walks past him and begins to laugh. You're wasting your time, Peril says. You won't see any action. I'll wipe out the entirety security force alone. Don't let your arrogance jeopardize our success, Storm cautions. We can't be gung-ho. We must be smart about this if we're going to rescue Brian. I don't care what happens to the virtual, and I don't take orders from you, Peril growls. I'm leaving. He leaves the hotel. Do we follow him? Tyrell asks. We really need his added firepower. I think we kinda have to. Like you said, we need him, Mr. E says. Unlike him, I have no delusions that I can defeat all of them by myself. It will take both Peril and myself to get past the hospital's enhanced warriors, Storm says. What do we do about them? Tyrell asks, looking over at their prisoners. Can we really leave them here unsupervised? Not much of a choice, Mr. E says. We can't take them with us. They give away our position the first opportunity they got. I know I'm going to sound like Peril on this one, but I think we should probably kill them both, Storm says. No way, Tyrell shouts. We aren't killing anyone. We aren't like that. You aren't, Storm says coldly, but I will do whatever is necessary. Did you choose to become one of Khan's dogs? I would bet that neither of them chose this either, Tyrell argues. I chose to use the power they gave me to rebel against the company and against Khan. They had that same choice to make, and they chose to serve as hired hands to the monster that created them. They have to suffer the consequences of their decisions. Come on, you can't just kill them. That isn't right. If we leave them unguarded, they could escape and warn the doctor of our attack, Mr. E says. I don't believe this. You're on board with murder? Tyrell asks, shocked. It may be the best option out of a lot of lousy ones, Mr. E says. I'll stay and watch them, Tyrell says. I can't let you kill them. They're our prisoners, and that makes their lives our responsibility. What kind of people do we become when we start executing prisoners? Damn it, Storm curses. We won't be able to go through with our attack this way. Mr. E can't infiltrate the hospital alone. Peril's so damn confident that he can take on all the guards by himself. I say let him prove it, Tyrell says. And if he can't? If Peril's defeated, all those fighters come after us next. We'll be trapped in the hospital with our exits blocked by the doctor's finest warriors, Storm argues. You can just let us go, Switch proposes with a grin. I promise we won't interfere with your suicide mission. Flex nods her head up and down in agreement. That's not gonna happen, Storm says. You can't be trusted. And you can? Switch asks. You were given power and a purpose by Khan. What did you do in return? You betrayed him and sided with a bunch of weaklings with no vision. It's too late for the corporate Kool-Aid, Storm says. I will never be a hired killer. Pathetic, Switch growls, disgusted. Why would the GX parasite waste its gift on someone like you? So many of my comrades volunteered and were deemed unworthy just to become mindless rejects. You're one of the rare chosen, and yet you chose to have no appreciation of what has been bestowed upon you.
I'm done with this, Storm growls, walking towards the door. I'm gonna go try to catch up with Peril. We'll head over as soon as we figure out a solution to the prisoner situation, Mr. E says. As Storm exits the building, Switch begins to smile widely. Finally! I thought he was never going to leave. What are you talking about? Tyrell asks. With both of your fighters gone, it'll be a piece of cake escaping. You're still restrained, Tyrell says. It's not like that has changed. Oh, but my companion has been feigning her weakness. We were unsure of our chances against Peril and Storm, but you normies are nothing to be worried about, Switch says. Activating the GX parasite in her blood, Flex increases her muscle mass dramatically in order to break free of her restraints. She stands, pulling the rag out of her mouth. Gross, she says, spitting on the floor. Mr. E moves for the door in hopes of shouting for help, but Flex stomps the ground and causes the entire building to shake. Mr. E stumbles, and it gives the young woman time to block his path. Kill them, and let's get out of here, Switch says. The doctor needs to be warned about Peril and Storm. Flex hesitates. These two were against killing us. So? I can't help it if they're compassionate idiots. What Storm said. I can't help but feel he has a point. I'm not some hired killer. Look, I'm grateful my life was saved, but using this power to kill people doesn't seem right. Switch sighs loudly. You going soft now, too? Damn it! Let's just tie them up and go deal with Storm and Peril before they reach the hospital. Switch grabs Tyrell by the throat. I don't think so. I don't have the same weaknesses as you. Let him go, Flex says, balling her fists. We don't have to be like this. We can choose to use our power in a better way. I'm happy with my power and how I use it, Switch says. I enjoy killing. Mr. E attacks from behind without warning, breaking a table lamp over Switch's head. Blood runs from the man's scalp, but he does not release his grip. That wasn't very nice, Switch growls. Tyrell kicks out, gasping for breath as his skin discolors and his eyes bulge. Stop it! Flex shouts, bringing a hand down across Switch's arm. The man screams in pain as the woman's enhanced strength shatters all the bones in his arm and shoulder. Tyrell collapses to the floor as Switch's arm hangs lifelessly to the side. You fucking bitch! There was no need to kill them, Flex pleads, still trying to salvage her alliance. You can't be so quick to murder. We have to try to find other solutions. Slowly, the personality of Lynn Jordan begins to return to the GX warrior called Flex. Just like Peril and Storm, the parasite was wasted on you, Switch coughs. They should have left you to die in that car. Switch triggers the parasite in his own blood to activate. Now you've left me with no other choice. What? Flex asks, confused. She suddenly finds that she's unable to move. Each of us was gifted with a unique ability when we bonded to GX. You gained extraordinary strength and the power to rearrange your organs. Rapture gained an unrivaled healing ability. Storm was gifted with the ability to generate electricity within his body and manipulate external sources of it by melding the currents with his own. Do you know what I'm capable of? Whatever you're planning to do, you don't have to do it. I don't? Switch laughs. We may heal faster than normies, but you've pretty much forced my hand. It will take weeks for my arm to be usable again. How do I ever repay you for that? Flex struggles, flaring up her GX parasite to no avail. Please, we don't have to be killers. We can do better in this world. Switch laughs, punching his good arm into his own stomach as hard as he can. He vomits blood, doubling over in pain. That hurt. What are you doing? Flex shouts in confusion. Switch shakily places his hand on his forehead and his other on hers. Using my power the way God intended. Both figures are lit up by a strange glow. Flex feels her consciousness slipping away as if she's being pulled into a deep sleep against her will. The GX parasite and its immense, latent psychic abilities is able to carry Switch's consciousness over to the mind of the target, and in return, transport theirs into his former body. What? Flex whispers, opening her eyes. Her body is suddenly flooded with pain. She sees herself standing in front of her, and she is very confused. Switch mutters, inspecting his new feminine form. This'll be interesting, he says, cupping his breasts in his hands. I've never been a woman before. Tyrell sits up, rubbing his throat. What's going on? We have to get out of here, Mr. E shouts. He can swap bodies by touching you. Switch laughs from Flex's body. Why would I want to take over either of you when I have this superior vessel? Not only is she also GX compatible, but she's sexy as hell. Get out of my body, Flex coughs, drilling blood out of her mouth. I don't think so, Switch laughs. That body is all yours now. Tyrell presses a gun against the back of Switch's head. Go back to your own body. You don't have the balls to pull that trigger, Switch growls. Care to test me? Tyrell says coldly. I've had enough of your bullshit today. Killing me guarantees that she will never be able to regain her body. At least she'll be alive. You won't be able to say the same. Fine, Switch growls, extending a hand. Come here. Flex limps over to Switch, barely able to remain conscious because of the intense pain. All three of them are consumed in a radiant glow. Switch activates the parasite in Flex's blood, calling forth the parasite in his true body to activate his signature ability. It worked, Flex says, blinking several times and feeling slightly nauseated. I'm back in my own body. Tyrell moves his gun to Switch's direction and immediately fires twice, shooting the enhanced fighter in the chest. What are you doing? Mr. E shouts. We couldn't risk him trying that trick again, Tyrell says as Switch collapses to the ground, lifeless. I wish I'd been able to get through to him. I didn't want anyone else to have to die, Flex says with sadness. At least you came around to your senses, Mr. E says. I'm grateful for that. One less enemy is never a bad thing, Tyrell says. But will you still be against killing when we go up against the hospital's personnel? What? Flex asks, surprised. I never said I was going to help you. Your choice, Tyrell says. You're free to make your own decisions now. Both he and Mr. E leave the hotel to catch up with Storm. Flex stands alone in the hotel, filled with indecision. The PIA agents make their way to the emergency room entrance. Two paramedics lower a man with a piece of rebar sticking out of his thigh down to the street on a metal gurney. Need a hand? Lachey asks, trying to help lower down the gurney. It's fine, one of the paramedics replies, his voice coarse and unfriendly. We got it. Callahan quickly grabs the man's wrist, pulling him down out of the ambulance and holding him on his back with a gun to his mouth. Lachey disables the second paramedic, while Callahan pistol whips the first into unconsciousness. The injured man lunges from the ambulance, pulling the rebar from his leg and trying to stab Ross in the back. The agent pivots, shooting the attacker 4 times in the chest. The bodies are loaded into the back of the vehicle just as the driver comes around to the side to investigate the commotion. Seeing the agents, the driver draws his gun, but Lachey is the quicker draw. Callahan pushes the gurney into the main lobby with the barely breathing driver lying on the top. Our friend here has been shot. The receptionist hands the agent a clipboard. Fill out this information as best as you can. Do you know anything about his medical history? 2 men in white coats run down the hall, wheeling the gurney off quickly into another area of the hospital. Agent Callahan shakes his head. We mostly talk broads and baseball, no offense. Give us whatever you can. Your friend is in good hands. Lachey and Ross look quietly away from Callahan and into the hall that the Whitecoats came from. What are we even looking for? The doctor is an awful vague title. He could be any of the people here. He could even be a she, Lachey says in frustration. Let's get our hands on one of those, Ross says, pointing to a nurse, swiping a keycard to access an area restricted by an electronic set of double doors. Callahan and the rest of the team jog to catch up with them near the locked doors. We need a keycard to go any further, Lachey says, pointing to the door. Callahan looks around until he locates a restroom, just as a man in blue scrubs walks inside. Hang on. Callahan walks briskly into the restroom and returns a few minutes later. Let's go, he says, holding out a keycard. Do I even want to know? Ross asks. He'll survive. We don't have time to play nice, Callahan replies. Alyssa and Bernard reach the apartment buildings where the revenant creatures are most strongly concentrated. Cautiously, the two hunters enter the derelict building. The entire place is deserted and looks as if it's been that way for decades. Bernard bends down, scooping up a handful of dust from one of the many piles of it scattered about. These are the residents, Bernard says, shaking the dust out of his hand until only a single silver filling remains. Is that a goddamn tooth? Alyssa asks, shuddering. Bernard nods. All of these people were completely drained of their lives. We are most definitely dealing with revenants. I hate being right sometimes, Alyssa sighs. We need to find and kill these creatures before they expand their feeding grounds. They hear a sound and both pivot on instinct, drawing their enchanted swords. A woman stumbles out of an apartment room, reaching out in terror. Help me! She cries. Behind her, the spidery arms of a creature easily 7 foot tall with dozens of eyes appears. The revenant snatches the woman and pulls her back. Before either hunter can react, a 4 foot wide mouth lowers down around her head and snaps closed, taking nearly half of her torso in a single bite. Alyssa reaches the beast first, cleaving through the two closest stabilizing legs. The revenant falls forward off balance, and Bernard leaps over his partner, bringing his own blade down through the beast's head and splitting it in two. They gain no nourishment from physically eating, Alyssa says, looking down at the bloody remains of the woman. Why would it do such a thing rather than feed off her life force? Perhaps it is just the remaining instinct of whatever creature the revenant was in life, Bernard says, unsure. Maybe it was a predator of some kind. The instinct to hunt may linger even after death. They hear more noise coming from the floor above. Maybe there are other survivors. Bernard nods and they run upstairs. On the next floor they encounter two more revenants, one resembling a skinned bear with 4 insect-like wings and large mantis-like eyes, and the other being a cross between a crab, a pig, and a man. Alyssa slides her hand down the length of her blade, causing several magical glyphs to illuminate. Flames engulf the weapon, and she charges at the creatures with a feral battle cry.